We're good. All right. So welcome to the first of Mapsterclass, where it's like class, but for mapping. Where we're talking about Celeste, we're talking about modding, and in this specific case, we're talking about decoration. And look, Solimano, welcome. We're gonna talk about decoration because I think that's probably my favorite part of modding. Because the decoration's kind of what brings a place alive, right? Like you make a world, you make a map, you put the gameplay in it, and then you put the decoration in it. And the decoration's the part, it really makes it alive, really makes it feel like a place with history. Where, there was stuff there, whether that be like a city or like a countryside with like animals in it, I don't care. It feels like a place, it feels cool. And that's what this stream is about. Because the Celeste game is really good at it, but we're kind of bad at it. It's something that I really don't see much in modding, like this specific thing. So let's first start by looking at the kind of world that Celeste made. So to do this, we're gonna start looking at world building and modding. Lol, exactly. That's it. Yeah, and that's it. We're gonna look at the good old debug menu, the debug map. Ooh, such a good map. So we're gonna look at one, kind of see what we can see in there. So the first one is this. You can see there's this if I get out like a pen, you can see we have this wrong layer. Yeah, we have this like ground layer here. It goes horizontal. That's like the floor. Look at it go. Wow, that's a floor. And over here, you can see a nice tower. And you can see you go up the tower and you go back down the tower. It's pretty cool. There's a tower. And yeah, that's the tower from chapter 2. It is old side, yeah. Pretty cool. Okay, all right, we got a tower. That's cool. Next example. It was a bit wide, so I couldn't fit it on the... I couldn't like quite fit it on. But there you go, look how neatly it's all packed in. Wow, it's almost like it's a building, because it is, it's a building. You can see the roof, it's nice and flat. Over here, nice roof, scuffed arrow, but that doesn't matter. You can see the front door, and everything's neatly packed inside of this house. Huh. Question, would these tips be useful for base game dev, maybe? Oh, probably. Ever finish your mod difficulty doc? Nope, still working on that. So yeah, this one, charming hotel, chapter 3, very charming. It's a house, architecture class. Let's go. And of course, the final example here of the base game Celeste. You've probably seen this. You recognize this, right? You recognize this. It's a mountain. It's just a mountain. Look at it go. Woo. Like you have the peak part. There's this peak. There's this cliff over here, just even a bit of overhang here. Wow, that's looks cool. Nice drawing, thank you. I'm very proud of it. Such a cool structure. Exactly, it looks so cool. And now, one more example. This one not from the base game Celeste. I want this mountain to be my friend. Oh, beautiful. So here's another example. This is... I don't know, I don't really see any structure here, and that's because it's a modded map, because modded maps don't really tend to do this. Modded maps don't really do that whole overarching structure thing. If you were curious, yeah, this is supposed to be a frozen forest, this is in Cryoshock, great mod, but like, you don't see the structure in here. It goes all over the place. Forest? I don't know. So, when you like, sorry Jackal, so often when like people make maps and you look at the Ahorn, you can see people really often start out making a room by doing this. They start with a little cliff at the beginning, they put Madeline on it, they start with a little cliff at the end. Jackal gets picked on by the teacher in class. Yes? At least I asked for permission first. Yeah. But cliff at the beginning, cliff at the end, and then in between, and it's gameplay. Wow, look at it go. And this works. This is very serviceable. This is very good for it's very good for making maps. It's very good for making gameplay. But for overarching structure, this is awful. This sucks. And I'm guilty of this. I am incredibly guilty of this. I have done this so many times. And I think a lot of people here are guilty. Oh no, the entire stream is gonna be me, Arlo. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, we kind of need to talk about how to do this, right? Like, if you don't do it this way, then how are you supposed to do this? How are you supposed to do this? Well, I'm gonna tell you. Here's the secret. If you want to make a place, you just draw the place. So here's an example I drew up earlier. So I thought, okay, let's draw a mountain or something. So first we have... fuck, wrong there again. So first we have the flat part. This is where you walk flat, then you approach the mountain, you kind of start climbing up. Whew, vertical cliff, very intense. Even a bit of overhang, that's really cool. And then the slow tapering off descent to the top. Very cool. So you kind of draw that out mentally or in paint, I won't judge you. And then what you can do is you can just kind of draw boxes around it, kind of like this. You draw boxes around the interesting parts and there, bam! That's your room layout. There you go. Now you know how to kind of subdivide your rooms. And this works for a lot of stuff, not just a mountain. You can just kind of create a structure beforehand and subdivide them. Like, details might not already be there, like, oh, maybe there will be like hanging things here or something, but that's not important at this stage. Right, I'm trying to do like rolling hills or a meadow. Yeah, so you could do something like draw something like this or something and then put the box around that, and then you get the similar thing. So using this, you can sort of map out what form, what shape your rooms are gonna have, and what use they have, what the role is. And once you have that, you can, you know, go back into Ahorn once again. And this is the parts where you can, you know, create a few different things around it. Because once you have that shape, you can, you know, try things out. So let's say you have something like this. This is good for that first part where it's like flat ground, right? You have the flat ground above and maybe put some obstacles in the way. Like here, I have sort of like rock formations where you go like through them. You can go like through the formations, that's really cool. You can have stuff like that going, or if you want a bit more of a like a precarious map design, you can have something like this. This is a bit more detailed. This is for if you just want, if you really want the floating structures, just kind of get this. So here you can see the whole screen is filled with those like structures, which are very vertical often. Then the red stuff is supposed to be like, oh, decals or background tiles, which kind of supports everything. Which, like, it fills the entire screen, but at least it, like, makes sense and feels good. And by the way, like, that is literally a room I copied from Gate to the Stars. It's pretty good. Like, you can see the pillars. It's really good at what it does. The decoration's very good. Makes sense, even though it's floating stuff. It's literally the same room. So, how do you kind of make this? Like, my method for making this is I go to Ahorn, as usual, and I draw out the first line. There you go, that's my first line. This is for like a room where you're like going towards the cliff. You start in the bottom left and then the top right, and you have that upwards trajectory in between. Alright, so you have your first layout. So now what you can do is you can iterate on it, so you can refine it a bit. So in this case I chose for this, where like, okay, you have the blue line, let's put some like big spike formations in between. Get some rocky business in there. And then once you kind of have your stuff that you want to interact with laid out, you can figure out how exactly you want to interact with it. In this case, I thought, all right, let's go through the rocks because interacting with foreground tiles is cool. And then you can like put some stuff in there. All right, cool. We're going full Chaos Theory coastline shit? Yeah, no, that's what we're doing. Zone in on that, make it more detailed. And kind of like that, you can get those interesting designs where you interact with your environment. And the tiles aren't just there to kind of surround you, you're actually interacting with them. You can kind of get that kind of cool design where everything still makes sense and you're still interacting with things. Like, I've heard a lot of people say like, oh no, you have to make your gameplay first, and then you put your foreground tiles down, and then you do your deco. No. You can do all of them at the same time if you work iteratively. If you do it one step at a time, you can do all of them at the same time, and that's how you get those really interesting maps. Kind of the same what Celeste did, I'm pretty sure. So let's see how else you can do this, because those shapes you can make, well, you can just kind of draw on your canvas, you can just kind of draw an ahorn, but it's always good to make your actual terrain, you know, actually make sense, because, you know, making sense is cool, making sense is pog. So let's say we have a bit of terrain, you know, something like this. It's a pretty common sight. You come in through the bottom, and then you kind of go out there, and there's like an overhang there, so you can't go up. That sort of stuff. That's all cool. But like, it should be noted, yeah, we have this overhang here, and stone's heavy. I'm scared to stand below that. It's gonna crash. It's heavy. So it would be cool if there was something holding up this cliff, right? I would make it feel a bit more balanced, make it feel a bit more realistic or whatever. So in that case, you can just, you know, create that support. And in this case, I went for something like this. The exact shape you can use for this sort of stuff heavily depends on what you're actually working with, whether it be like nature, cave shapes, trees, cities, whatever. But as long as it like makes sense, it's good. And of course, you have to pay attention a bit to like the shape of things. Make sure that when you start high, you kind of go to the bottom, you kind of spread out the force. Make it look good, make it look natural, right? Could you like go through a map and make shapes first and then make gameplay around it? Exactly, Scullymano. That's kind of how you do it. You do sort of both of them one step at a time, both at the same time. Yeah. So using this sort of stuff, you can add background tiles and decals, but mostly background tiles to sort of prop up your foreground tiles that you made earlier, and, you know, make stuff make sense. But now, I already hear the complaints. I already hear you say, oh, what's that? Oh, my theme is abstract, so none of this makes sense, none of this counts, huh? Oh, abstract? Huh? No, that's a cringe opinion. This always applies. All of this applies always, huh? Listen, we're gonna look at another example. Here's, once again, I'm sorry, Jackal, it's Cryoshock, I'm so sorry. Listen, you can see here we have a bit of map. And you start at the bottom left, you go to the right, and then you can also go up and go to the top left for a berry, like the berries over here. You can get that berry, but I'm sure you'll have noticed, Holly Cryoshock hater, hey listen, Cryoshock is a good map. Cryoshock's a good map, don't get me wrong. It's just that Deco can use some work in this sort of stuff. But also I'm Jackal's friend, so I can ask him. But yeah, listen, there's a death pit in that room. There's a death pit here. And death pits are cool, but you can see there's a room underneath the death pit. So it doesn't really make sense. Like, it works in a game, it works in a game engine, but you can fall into it, and you should be able to fall down to the next room if, like, it was a real place. Because death pits are always like a pit where if you fall into it, there's no return, you're off the place, you're dead, probably. But if there's stuff below you, it doesn't quite feel like that. Something I noticed in Vanilla Celeste, that BG tiles tend to show progress as you unconsciously follow them. That's also a cool thing, yeah. Hello, Nananta. So yeah, so what I'm trying to say here is that the death pit is a bit cringe sometimes, because there's stuff below it and it should not actually be a death pit. The death pit makes no sense. Here as well on the bottom, although it's a bit less harsh, because, well, yeah, you came from the bottom, and then if you go back to the bottom 2 meters across, you die? It's weird. It's weird. So let's once again look at how actual Celeste game does it. And for here I have Chapter 4 as example. This Chapter 4 is really good. So looking at Chapter 4, this is like roughly the middle of the chapter. You can see it's kind of subdivided in 2 parts. The first part uses death pits. All of it uses death pits. And the top also uses spikes or spinners of some kind. And there's no death pit to be seen. So you kind of have like the first parts, like the ridge parts in Golden Ridge, where, you know, you're walking high above those death pits, you walk high above the air, one misstep you're falling down below. That's really cool, that's really cool. And then later on you kind of enter into the safety of the caves. Well, safety, it's still filled with spikes, but there's no death pits, you're in the caves now. you're in the structures, and that's cool. But once again, I hear your complaints. Yeah, but Hanli, the cave section has 2 death pits right there. You see these death pits. And I tell you, yeah, you're right, there are death pits there. However, you can see that this death pit here on the right, it's at the bottom of the caves, and the death pit on the left is also at the bottom of the caves. So you can still have that feeling of, oh, I can fall out of the caves. You know, it's at the edge, it makes sense. So you can still kind of have that structure actually lined up. There's a cringe death pit of 482. Haha, I have read you like a book, because that's my next point. There is the cringe death pit right there, huh? What's up with this one? This one specifically, isn't that a cringe death pit, huh? Is that a cringe death pit? No, it's not a cringe death pit, and here's why. So, yeah, not a one below. Listen, shush, that's a cassette room or something, because those aren't canon. But the same principle kind of applies, because if you count out how many rooms are there in between, you can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rooms in between this death pit. And here I guess there's like 1, 2, 3, 4 if you count this particular gap. But the main thing is that it doesn't feel as connected. It's also, it's not cringe because it's official content, you're right, but it's less connected, right? Like, by the time you get to that 6th room, the first room will already be out of your memory, or at least like out of your subconscious memory of where you've been. It feels a lot further away than it actually is, which is why it's still allowed, because it doesn't feel bad, and that's at the end, you know, what matters, whether it feels good or not. So yeah, that's a death pit story. Pay attention to your death pits. And with that, we've basically covered the general gist of all these things, of like the big picture deco. So yeah, shush, just cringe death pit below. You can't convince me otherwise. No, that one isn't cringe. Listen, that's still like 1, 2, 3, 4 rooms. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Anyway, if we have to sum up the lessons of today, first, sketch your map shape. Sketching your map shape allows you to actually, you know, get that map shape out beforehand, allows you to follow it afterhand, makes it all good, makes you able to actually follow a plan. Rolling into that, according to that plan, you can iterate on your rooms to start out with a base concept and then slowly hone in on something that has both gameplay and deco. And for that, try to involve gameplay in the, try to involve the tiles in the gameplay if you can, because the tiles are always cool to interact with. It's always cool. It always makes the player feel good if they actually interact with the structures that the map is based off. It makes you feel a lot more like you're climbing a place. Next step, use structures that make sense. Stuff like the stuff that I showed earlier, where you use the background tiles to, you know, make sense of what's there, make sense of how everything's structured, all that cool stuff. And finally, beware of the death pits. Death pits can be hard to use sometimes, easy to use, as in, it's easy to just, you know, slap one of them in your map. But on a aesthetic level, on a decorative level, the death pits is scary to use, because it implies that there's nothing below you. And that's rough. Because usually in structures there is something below you, actually. So be wary of that. Imagine knowing literally anything about your map before just starting placing random entities. That's also fair. So by death pit you mean like nothing on the bottom of the level. Yeah, that's correct. Nothing on the bottom of a room. Spikes placed on blocks under you wouldn't count. Yep, that's alright, that's spikes, that's a floor. That makes sense decoration-wise. But this isn't me saying that death pits are heresy, that you shouldn't use death pits, because death pits are all good. It's just that they have a time and a place, and if you use them outside of that time and place, it could look a bit weird. So be wary of that. And with that, we come to the end of the main presentation of today. That was the main lesson. That was reasonable in length, I think. And not that I didn't like keep a timer how long that was, but that was the main story. Time for the quiz.